Happy Monday, wherever you're locked in from. Thank you for watching on KTN Home, on SpiceFM Online, YouTube and Facebook, and for tuning in on radio SpiceFM KE across the country and the world. We have a guest who's joined us in the studio, and he is Alhaj Hassan Nado. He's a national chairman of the Supreme Council of Kenya Muslims. He's here on this Maandamano Monday to talk to us about Maandamano and the way to go. We know that the religious leaders have been calling for dialogue with between the two sides of national leadership. Sheikh, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you on the show.
Thank you, Asante sana.
Karibu sana. First of all, Ramadan Karim.
Ramadan Mubarak.
Ramadan Mubarak. Hiyo basi. Karibu sana. Thank you very much for joining us. That's the hot seat of Kenya's biggest conversation.
Thank you.
To welcome you into the show proper, City Muga has a proverb. This week's proverbs are from which country, City?
DRC.
Uh-huh.
Yes. Democratic Republic of Congo, formerly known as Zaire, formerly known as Congo, Kinshasa. Now, I know you're waiting for it.
Congo Kinshasa.
Sa. Being well dressed does not prevent one from being poor.
Being well dressed does not prevent one from being poor.
Yes.
I feel like this proverb should have been the other way around.
Being poor does not prevent one from being well dressed.
Yes, exactly.
But nothing stops you from just changing. That's the beauty of proverbs. You can decide to look at it in that way, and it will be equally appropriate.
Sheikh, what do you think of this proverb?
Yeah, actually, I've just said also, as my sister here, is that I think it could have been the other way around. Yeah.
Being poor should not prevent one from being well dressed.
That's true. Yeah.
And what would you read from that proverb if we had it that way?
Proverbs have a lot of meanings. Sometimes it has a context that is the framers of that whatever came up with because of a certain context. But if you want to take it from the current context, is that actually if anything is possible, depending on your mindset and what you want to do, you can actually achieve it. Yeah.
Now, the Supreme Council of Kenya Muslims, you'll tell us about it because there are various other bodies of Muslims in the country.
Yeah.
Tell us the position of the Supreme Council of Kenya Muslims. What is it?
Yeah, the Supreme Council of Kenya Muslims is actually an umbrella body. It was formed in 1973 by leaders of various Muslim organizations in the country who felt that they wanted a common institution or a bridge between the community and government and development organizations. Because Kenya being a Muslim minority country and a secular state for that matter, there is always need to have one common entity that engages governments and international organizations at the national and international levels. So because it is very difficult for a local-based organization, a CBO, or an NGO for that matter, to be able to engage at the governmental level. Take, for example, here in this country, we have the Muslim majority countries or Muslim countries. And sometimes we engage, not because we are government, because we are not government, but we represent that entity being an umbrella body. So that is that's the reason why this organization was formed. The membership of the Supreme Council of Kenya Muslims are organizations. It is a corporate body membership. Okay. So for me, for example, to be the chair of SUPKEM, I did not get into SUPKEM as an individual, as Hassan Nado. I got into SUPKEM through another vehicle, which is a member of SUPKEM. Okay. That's how we came in. So it's a corporate membership organization, and our members are largely mosques, madrasas, community-based organizations, and some very, very limited NGOs, which are basically focused on serving the Muslim community. Being a religious organization, every member of the organization must be 100% Muslim membership. Yes.
I see. So when you speak then as SUPKEM, you're speaking on behalf of all these other institutions.
Yes.
And you have the mandate to speak on matters of governance or matters of politics or matters of national importance as SUPKEM.
Yes, we have, but the framers of SUPKEM's constitution, or the founding fathers for that matter, deliberately made SUPKEM to be apolitical. And the reason was that to ensure that we protect we don't mix the issues. We don't mix issues of advocacy. We don't mix issues of human rights and governance with politics. So SUPKEM doesn't take side in any political context in the country or even beyond. We try to be as neutral as possible, where we only speak what matters to the community, what we think is right. But Kenya being an interesting country, we also have so many emerging entities, institutions who also claim the same space. Yes.
What's SUPKEM's position on the Maandamano?
SUPKEM is part of now being an umbrella body, we are also part of the interfaith network in the country, where we work with other colleagues, other umbrella organizations representing other institutions. And we have been there for quite a while, especially in the beginning of the last year's election, where the religious community in this country stood firm and propagated peace for us to have achieved peace. And we made sure that Kenya goes to elections peacefully, and also after elections we are able to end the process of the litigations peacefully in the country, and we're getting a new government. When we started getting information about these the ongoing conversation about Maandamano, I think the religious community has come out strongly on what they think should be done. Our position has been there is need for dialogue, because with dialogue you won't go wrong in any way, because it is always in dialogue where you'll be able to make your statements known, your agenda known, and also people appreciate the issues that you are raising. But if we use other mechanisms that people tend to use, like going to the streets and other places, we end up actually losing the agenda. We lose the very important aspects of the issues that are being raised. And finally, politics also should not be allowed to dominate very important issues of governance and concerns of the Kenyan people. And those, we should not be mixing issues.
Sure.
Yeah.
So does SUPKEM then lend its voice to governance in the country and how governance essentially should be carried out? Does that happen?
Yes. Actually, I've said it that since the push for the constitution processes in early 90s, SUPKEM was part and parcel of the Fungamano initiative that actually driven the country to the level of actually having the CKRC process, and all those things. SUPKEM has been part and parcel of that journey all through. And we were there, and unfortunate situations in 2007, 2009, 2008, post-election violence, we made our contribution, and many other processes that we have been, SUPKEM has been there. Yes.
So, if there was one overriding statement that would come from SUPKEM about the mass action, about the protests that we are seeing, that we saw last week and that we are likely to see today, what would that be? Very clearly.
We have actually said, not only us, again I repeat, with many others, no to mass action.
Why?
We prefer a kind of a coordinated dialogue program, a kind of, so that we avoid making a bad situation to be worse. Bad because we are just coming from a very almost a 2-year lockdown because of COVID-19. We have also come in from a very competitive electoral season in the country, and our politics are almost normally goes ethnic in a way, regional in a way. So we have been having a very, very rough situations. We are also in the time of the very harsh drought in the country that has affected over 70% of the land of Kenya. We are also aware that Kenya itself is unable to feed its population, because today in this country we have 52 million people, and when you look at the food deficit here, it is very, very high. We cannot be able to feed the Kenyan people. People have lost their livelihoods because of the drought. So we have many other issues. We are losing the education system. Our education is not has failed in this country. The CBC thing is not actually working. So when we have politics now dominating the space, we lose the very basics where Kenyans should actually be talking. I think that Kenyans should be talking about things that need to be brought to the table. And that's what we are saying, gentlemen. Can we kindly have dialogue in the way, the aim of addressing some of those primary concerns of the Kenyan people? Yeah.
There are those who argue that protests are precisely what you've just described. People are trying to express what they feel words would not do. And when they come out in large numbers, all they are communicating is perhaps a pre-prepared agenda, but they're saying, we would like these matters addressed. Now, if we just go back to what is actually in the country, and you presented it well, the drought, that was not brought about by this sitting government.
Yes.
COVID, it came about before this government was in place.
Mm-hmm.
There are many things that come about. And what is also true is that what we see happening in the country is often a continuation of what was begun by other administrations.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Mm. So when people protest about the things that matter to them, what are the things that people keep pointing out to? Prices, cost of living going up. Mm. It's a reality. And there are those who explain it.
Mm-hmm.
People keep saying price of fuel goes up. Essentially, the things that people consider necessary for just daily living keep going up. Now, in your opinion, do you think that the protests are unrealistic because this government ought to be given time to sort this thing out? Or do you feel that the protests are because the feeling is the government will not sort these things out?
If I was asked to really divide the issues that needs to be brought on the table now, I would have said, can we put aside the issues to do with the legality of the current regime?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it is legal or illegal, whatever it is, can we put aside and not talk about it now? Can we also set aside the issues about the Cherera 4, the issues about the opening of the service? Can we also concentrate now on the reduction of the cost of living? Talk about education in our country, the corruption that is actually at all levels, at the national and the county level. Can we be able also to talk about the risks the country is facing from the climate change and how do we respond to it because of what we are facing now? Are we even talking about these issues? So to me, I think for us to be largely pro-citizens, we need to differentiate between the political agenda and the social welfare issues of the Kenyan people. So if we are able to divide those, we can actually be able to say, okay, for the issues of politics, because we can't run away from the politics issues, we need to set out a kind of a program on how do we deal with the electoral justice in the country. Because it has been something that has been always very elusive. Elusive because our political class normally concentrate on the campaigns. Yeah. After elections, they go on recess for so many, for 2-3 years, and then they come back again, forgetting that there were things that were supposed to have been fixed if those issues were not fixed in the IEBC. So now we cannot say, oh, let us talk about IEBC now, because if the question about IEBC was about evaluating how the system worked in the last election, I will say that is what we need to do. Because even the Supreme Court recommendations, they are not just about who has won elections. The Supreme Court also gave the guideline what needs to be addressed by IEBC. Yeah. Are we talking about those? In every election, IEBC is supposed to give the country kind of a report, what really transpired. I expect the political class to be talking about having a national conversation about the outcome, the report of IEBC on how they conducted the elections. That is the only way we can fix the electoral justice in this country. It cannot be an ad hoc thing. We cannot address it through the streets, but we need to have a conversation about it. But now, because you put things that you really think, what should be done now, and what can be done tomorrow. So to me, now we need to talk about what is affecting the Kenyan people. And then the rest we can actually be able to postpone and deal with another time.
So those who then talk about the building of democracies, I mean, let's just look at they've written it down in history, they've lived the experience, and they've spoken that most of these things are born out of agitation. That's what they say. The change that you see then comes as as a result of, going through that process where, there's made up of many things. There are negotiations, there's multilateral diplomacy taking place, and there's mass protests in a lot of cases. Do you think that in this case, with the things that you have outlined here, do you see a place for these mass protests that we're talking about? Or is there another avenue through which these things can be realized?
Yeah, there is, and that's why actually I try to explain it that can we be able to divide these issues as a country and pack them and say, okay, we are going to deal with 1, 2, 3 now. 1, 2, 3, we work it on it going forward. To me, the mass protest responds to specific issues. You cannot put a lot of baggage on mass protest and we expect to achieve. You will not achieve.
It can be a 10-point agenda.
Yes, it cannot be. But now, and these protests that we are seeing today, we have seen it before. But the sad thing, they have not been, the issues that we are protesting before have not been resolved. They have not been resolved up to now. So how are we sure that the protest will resolve the issues that are concerning those who are organizing the protest? And finally, on this matter, I think when you are in a hole, you don't continue digging the hole. You need to find out how you can get out of it. But if you continue digging it, you'll actually sink. So for a country, for Kenya, we are now in the hole. We can't continue digging it. We need to find ourselves on how we can get up so that we can be able to see what we are going to do up there. So that's another proverb.
Religious leaders, Sheikh, are then calling for dialogue. In what format should the dialogue be? Who should be holding the dialogue?
Yeah, it's a question, and a very valid one. The dialogue in this matter is actually can only be convened by the leadership of this country. Because, for example, for us, especially, let me talk about the post-election, just before elections, and after the elections, when the results were announced, and then there was this kind of, we go to Supreme Court, we are not going, this kind of stuff. And what the religious leaders did then, they did what came to be known as shuttle diplomacy, reaching out to the key leaders and actually talking to them, asking them that they should actually pursue the legal channel and kind of stuff. Even that going off to Supreme Court was actually a very serious effort behind the scenes by the religious leaders. Initially, Azimio was not ready even to go to Supreme Court then, but we persuaded them that it is important that since we have this mechanism of sorting out, resolving our issues, let us pursue it. Why? Because if they did not go to Supreme Court and start agitation immediately, then the country could have actually gone to the dogs. We may not have controlled it. But thank God they were able to listen. They gave that dialogue an opportunity, and they went to argue their case up there. So what we require now, again, there is a need for such kind of approach again, because for us or any other Kenyan, you cannot call, for example, and say we want to have a national conversation in Bomas of Kenya where you want to invite the Prime Minister, and you want to find the head of state without having prior conversation with them behind the scenes. That will not work, because these are respectable leaders. They are, and they have a huge following. You cannot, in any way ignore them. They are also citizens of this country. So that conversation is ongoing. The challenge that I must admit that we face today as religious leaders, there is some sense of divisions, because we are Kenyans, because religious leaders are also Kenyans, and what goes around is always around. You find somebody being sympathetic to the other side, agreeing with the other side, and kind of stuff. So they are also part of it.
So you have hardliners even within the religious leaders.
The second item, which is a little bit very, very tricky, is the principles themselves. Both the President of the Republic of Kenya, His Excellency William Ruto, and the Prime Minister Raila Odinga, that both coalitions are actually saying religious leaders, stay away from this. Please, this is not your area. Now, this by itself make it very difficult for us. Now we have been forced to speak to the Kenyan people, and that is now the last resort. That let us talk to our fellow citizens. That if you can find a way let us refrain. Let us have a way of dealing with it. Let us see how it goes, because it's becoming very difficult to honestly to. You have seen what was said all the last week. They are talking about police, religious leaders.
Kando kidogo.
Kando, yes.
So you're saying, Sheikh, that you're speaking out like this to them through the media, through public forums, because attempts to reach them directly have been rebuffed.
No, it is actually reaching out to them. We are reaching out to them. There are other mechanics of how to reach out to them.
Okay.
We are doing that.
Are you succeeding in reaching out to the president, and have you succeeded in reaching out to Raila?
We have not succeeded, because now, unfortunately, they are coming out publicly and saying Kakando. So now when they say Kakando, they make it very difficult, because we continue pushing our networks. But now they are pushing it publicly, because we do not want this thing to come public. We want to know these are people of, these are leaders. And always when we are engaging leaders, you don't engage leaders through the media. When you see people engaging leaders through the media, then they have actually failed in terms of making good progress out there. Otherwise, the best way of reaching out to leaders is always behind the scenes. I cannot address the president on radio. On radio.
Actually, you can.
But that's the last resort. That is the last resort.
Sheikh, are we going to break?
Yeah, but you can ask the question, then he can come back with...
Yes. Sheikh, what I want to ask is, in your opinion, as a leader of the Islamic faith, what do you see as the role of clerics like yourselves in a nation such as ours, and in pointing to things which are going wrong and speaking truth to power? What do you see as the role of the clerics? That's my question.
You can respond.
Actually, that is the only work. If there was only one thing the clerics or religious leaders are supposed to do, is only that: to speak the truth to those in leadership. You cannot guide people without telling them the truth. You can tell them, for you to guide them, you have to speak the truth. And that is the truth that has always made us to achieve what we have achieved, because we tell the leaders the truth. But now when you are telling the truth, it depends on how you package that truth, because we are in Africa, and there is certain sense of being a leader in Africa with certain
and there's a respectful way
exactly.
you must address leadership.
Absolutely. So that the religious leaders must also apply that as they address the leadership, and that is the only work that we are supposed to do.